Police dog attacks. Man at the airport, but when they see his backpack, everyone is shocked. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport buzzed with its usual frenetic energy. Passengers hurried through the vast concourses, announcements echoed through. Speakers overhead and security personnel monitored every corner for suspicious behavior. Among the travelers, Michael Carter walked with measured steps, clutching a weathered leather backpack. On the surface, he appeared to be just another passenger about to board a flight, but his distant expression and quick glances around revealed a subtle discomfort, almost imperceptible to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. Michael checked his boarding pass again, confirming his gate number, Flight 347 to Seattle. He couldn't remember exactly why he was going there, just that he needed to. The past few years felt like a blur, fragments of memories that never quite connected into a coherent picture. Doctors had told him it might be stress-related amnesia, but something about that diagnosis never felt right to him. Final boarding call for Flight 347 to Seattle at Gate C42. The announcement blared through the terminal. Michael quickened his pace, joining the line of passengers filing toward the gate. That's when he noticed a security team with a K9 unit making their routine patrol through the terminal. The German Shepherd, wearing a vest labeled DFW Security, moved methodically alongside its handler, sniffing luggage and passengers as they passed. As Michael stepped forward in the line, the dog's behavior suddenly changed. The animal stopped, its body tensing. Then, without warning, the German Shepherd lunged toward Michael, barking ferociously and straining against its leash. The handler struggled to control the animal as it tried to reach Michael's backpack. "Sir, please step aside," the handler commanded, maintaining a tight grip on the leash as the dog continued its aggressive display. Passengers around them scattered, creating a small circle of space. "What's going on?" Michael asked, raising his hands instinctively. "I don't understand." Two TSA officers quickly approached, their expressions stern. "Sir, we need you to come with us. Bring your belongings." The commotion had drawn the attention of everyone nearby. Whispers spread through the terminal as Michael was escorted away from the gate by the security officers, the dog still barking and lunging toward his backpack. Inside a small, windowless room, the officers instructed Michael to place his backpack on a steel table. "We need to search your bag, sir. Do we have your permission?" Michael nodded, still bewildered. "Of course, but there's nothing in there that would—" The officer raised his hand, cutting him off. "We'll determine that, sir." As they methodically emptied the contents of his backpack, Michael watched with growing confusion. Clothes, a toiletry bag, a paperback novel, his wallet, all ordinary items you'd expect from a traveler. But then, wrapped in a black cloth at the bottom of the bag, the officer pulled out something Michael had never seen before. The object was small, about the size of a smartphone, but thicker, with an unusual design unlike any consumer electronics. It emitted a faint vibration and had no visible buttons or display, just a smooth metallic surface with intricate patterns etched into it. "What is this?" the officer demanded, holding it up. Michael stared at the device, genuinely perplexed. I don't know, that's not mine. I've never seen it before." "Sir, do you expect us to believe someone else packed your bag?" "No, I packed it myself, but that thing, it wasn't there. I don't know what it is or how it got there." The officers exchanged glances, clearly not believing him. One of them spoke into his radio, requesting assistance from their tech specialist. Within minutes, a woman in plain clothes entered the room, introduced herself as Agent Sarah Reynolds from Homeland Security, and carefully examined the device. "This needs to be contained immediately," she said, her voice tense. She placed the object in a special case that appeared to be lined with some kind of protective material. "Sir, I'm afraid you'll need to come with me for further questioning." "I have a flight to catch," Michael protested weakly, already sensing that his travel plans were no longer relevant. "That's not going to happen today," Agent Reynolds replied. "We need to understand how you came into possession of this device." Hours passed in an interrogation room as various officials questioned Michael about his background, his travel plans, and most importantly, the mysterious device. He answered truthfully, providing his identification and explaining that he was an IT consultant traveling for work. But as the questioning continued, inconsistencies in his story began to emerge. Not because he was lying, but because there were gaps in his own knowledge about himself. "Mr. Carter, you claim you've been working as an independent IT consultant for the past 5 years, but we can't find any record of your clients or tax filings during that period," Agent Reynolds said, reviewing a file in front of her. "In fact, there's virtually no digital footprint for you at all between 2019 and 3 months ago. No credit card usage, no residential leases, no travel records. It's as if you disappeared." Michael's mouth went dry. That can't be right. I've been working. I have an apartment in Austin." "Yes, which you leased 3 months ago, paying 6 months' rent in advance with cash. Before that, nothing." She leaned forward. "Where were you for those 5 years, Mr. Carter?" Michael began, but found himself unable to provide specific details. He had memories, vague impressions of places and people, but nothing concrete, nothing he could point to with certainty. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead as he realized how strange this must appear to the agents questioning him. As the interrogation continued, flashes of memory began to surface in Michael's mind. Sterile white offices, advanced computer systems, confidential files, the unsettling feeling of being watched. Each fragment came with a visceral emotional response: anxiety, urgency, purpose, but no context to make sense of them. "I think I worked somewhere secure," he finally said, struggling to piece together the fragments. "A research facility, maybe. Everything was white. There were security protocols, advanced technology." Agent Reynolds exchanged a look with her colleague. "What kind of research, Mr. Carter? What were you working on?" Before he could answer, another agent entered the room and whispered something to Reynolds. Her expression changed subtly as she stood up. "We'll continue this conversation later, Mr. Carter. Please wait here." Left alone in the interrogation room, Michael tried to organize his thoughts. Why couldn't he remember the past 5 years clearly? And how did that strange device end up in his backpack? Nothing made sense, and the more he tried to remember, the more his head ached with the effort. When Agent Reynolds returned, she was accompanied by a stern-looking man in a dark suit who introduced himself only as Director Wallace. "Mr. Carter," Wallace began, his voice measured and authoritative, "we've been reviewing the security footage from the terminal. I think you'll find this interesting." He placed a tablet on the table and played a video clip. The footage showed Michael standing in line at the coffee shop earlier that day. A woman in a hat and sunglasses briefly stood behind him. As Michael reached for his coffee and turned to leave, the woman smoothly slipped something into his backpack's side pocket. "Do you recognize this woman?" Director Wallace asked, freezing the frame on the clearest image of her face. Michael stared at the screen, straining to see if her features triggered any recognition. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place her. I don't think so, maybe, I don't know." This same woman has been spotted at international airports in London, Tokyo, and Dubai over the past month, always in proximity to solo travelers with profiles similar to yours, Wallace explained. "We believe she deliberately planted that device on you. The question is, why you specifically? Were you chosen randomly, or is there something about Michael Carter that made you the perfect courier?" The implications of Wallace's words hung heavy in the air. If Michael had been specifically targeted, then there must be something about him, something perhaps even he didn't remember about himself, that made him valuable to whoever was behind this. As the questioning continued into the evening, a tech specialist entered with preliminary findings on the device. It's unlike anything we've seen before, she reported. The components appear to be military-grade, possibly capable of interfering with aircraft communications and security systems. What's strange is that parts of it match classified designs developed by American defense contractors. Director Wallace's gaze intensified as he studied Michael. Mr. Carter, before your 5-year disappearance, what exactly did you do for a living? Michael opened his mouth to answer with his rehearsed response about IT consulting, but stopped. The fragments of memory were aligning into something more coherent now. White labs, military personnel, his hands working on intricate circuitry, security clearances and non-disclosure agreements. I was an engineer, he said slowly, the realization dawning on him. I worked for a defense contractor on communication systems. Wallace nodded, unsurprised, as if confirming something he already suspected. Not just any engineer, Mr. Carter. According to our records, you were one of the leading developers at Quantum Shield Technologies until you abruptly resigned and disappeared 5 years ago. Your work was highly classified, focusing on counterintelligence and secure communications technology. The revelation hit Michael like a physical blow. Why couldn't he remember this part of his life clearly? What had happened 5 years ago that made him disappear without a trace? And most importantly, why was someone trying to use him now as an unwitting courier for what appeared to be stolen military technology? As night fell over Dallas-Fort Worth, the mystery surrounding Michael Carter had only deepened, and the answers seemed further away than ever. After hours of questioning, Michael was transferred to a secure holding facility outside the airport. They gave him a small, sparse room with a bed, desk, and bathroom, more comfortable than a cell, but still clearly a place of detention. The door locked from the outside, and a camera in the corner maintained constant surveillance. Sleep eluded him that night as his mind raced with the implications of what he'd learned. Quantum Shield Technologies. The name resonated within him, triggering flashes of memory, security badges, laboratory equipment, colleagues whose faces were just beyond. Clear recollection. The more he focused on these fragments, the more his head throbbed with a peculiar pain that seemed to warn him away from those thoughts. Morning brought Agent Reynolds with a tray of breakfast and fresh questions. "Sleep well?" she asked, setting the tray down on the desk. "Not particularly," Michael replied, rubbing his temples. "I've been trying to remember, but it's like hitting a wall. Every time I get close to something significant, the memories slip away." Reynolds pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "Our background check confirms everything Director Wallace told you yesterday. Until 5 years ago, you were Michael Carter, senior engineer at Quantum Shield Technologies, with top-secret clearance and access to some of our most advanced defense projects. Then on April 17th, 2019, you resigned without notice, liquidated your assets, and effectively vanished." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photographs of a younger Michael in a lab coat, standing beside military officials and fellow scientists. In one photo, he was shaking hands with a 4-star general, both smiling as they stood before what appeared to be a prototype communication device. "That's me," Michael whispered, touching the photos. "But it feels like looking at someone else's life." "What's the last thing you clearly remember before your recent emergence in Austin 3 months ago?" Michael closed his eyes, concentrating. Fragments, disconnected images. "I remember a cabin, somewhere remote, mountains, I think, snow. I remember feeling afraid, no, cautious, like I was hiding from something." He paused, frowning. "And I remember a woman, not clearly, but her presence was significant. The same woman from the airport footage? I don't know, maybe." He shook his head in frustration. "Why can't I remember?" "We have a theory," Reynolds said carefully. "Given your background and the nature of your memory loss, Our medical team suspects you may have undergone a targeted memory suppression procedure. Memory suppression, like brainwashing, more sophisticated. There are experimental techniques, mostly theoretical, allegedly, that can selectively inhibit access to specific memory networks without damaging the brain itself. It's not permanent, which would explain why you're experiencing fragments returning. The concept should have seemed absurd, but something about it resonated with Michael. A flash of memory, lying on a medical table surrounded by equipment, a woman's voice saying, "It's the only way to keep you safe, to keep everyone safe." "I think," Michael started, his voice unsteady, "I think I might have consented to it." "To forgetting?" Reynolds leaned forward, her interest piqued. "Why would you do that? What would make someone willingly erase 5 years of their life?" Before Michael could respond, the door opened and Director Wallace entered, accompanied by a thin man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a serious expression. "Mr. Carter, this is Dr. Elliot Foster, former Chief Science Officer at Quantum Shield Technologies. He was your supervisor." Dr. Foster studied Michael with a mixture of caution and what might have been relief. "Hello, Michael. It's been a long time." Michael stared at the older man, waiting for recognition to strike. But Foster remained a stranger to him. "I'm sorry, I don't remember you." "That's to be expected," Foster said, his voice gentle. "The procedure was thorough." "So it's true. I deliberately erased my memories?" Foster exchanged glances with Wallace, who nodded slightly. "Yes, though suppressed would be more accurate than erased. You came to me 5 years ago, extremely agitated. You said you discovered something dangerous in your work, something that had implications beyond what any of us had anticipated. You were afraid of what might happen if certain parties learned what you knew." "What did I discover?" Michael asked, a chill running through him. "You wouldn't tell me the details," Foster replied. "You said it was safer if as few people knew as possible. You had already wiped your research from our servers and destroyed your personal notes. You only said you needed to disappear completely, with no way of accessing those memories, even under duress. And you helped me do this? Erase my own work from my mind?" Foster looked uncomfortable. "Not directly, but I put you in contact with specialists, people with experience in cognitive manipulation techniques. The rest was your decision." Michael tried to process this information. Had he really been so afraid of his own knowledge that he'd chosen to erase it from his mind? What could possibly warrant such an extreme measure? "The device found in your backpack," Wallace interjected. "Dr. Foster believes it may be related to the project you were working on before your disappearance, a quantum interference module, capable of disrupting secure communications, potentially including military and aviation systems." "We never completed that project," Foster added. "After you left, we discovered too many design flaws, too many potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited. The entire program was scrapped. But if someone managed to solve those problems, they'd have a device that could compromise any secure system in the world," Wallace finished. Michael stared at the table, trying to connect these revelations to the fragmented memories surfacing in his mind. "But I still don't understand why someone would plant this device on me, specifically, if I can't remember creating it." "Because you're the key, Michael," Foster said quietly. "The design had a built-in failsafe, your personal encryption algorithm. Without it, the device is just an expensive paperweight. It only works when activated by someone with the proper authorization sequence. So they need me to activate it," Michael realized. "But I don't remember how." "Consciously, no. But procedural memory works differently than declarative memory. Your fingers might remember what your mind doesn't," Foster explained. "Like a pianist who can play a complicated piece without consciously recalling every note." The implications were chilling. Someone had gone to elaborate lengths to place this device in Michael's possession, knowing he was the only one who could activate it, even if he didn't remember how or why he'd created it in the first place. "We need to find out who's behind this," Wallace said firmly. "And the best way to do that is to set a trap. We'll release you, make it appear as though you've been cleared of suspicion. Whoever planted that device will likely approach you once you're free." "You want to use me as bait," Michael said flatly. "With your full cooperation and our complete protection," Reynolds assured him. "You'll never be out of our sight. And what if my memories start coming back? What if there was a good reason I wanted to forget whatever I knew?" Foster and Wallace exchanged another look. "That's a risk we'll have to take," Wallace said. "The potential threat this technology poses is too great to ignore." After further discussion of operational details, Michael reluctantly agreed to the plan. The following morning, he was officially released from custody, with profuse apologies for the inconvenience and a cover story about a case of mistaken identity. Reynolds and her team would maintain surveillance from a distance as Michael went about his normal activities, waiting for someone to make contact. The plan didn't take long to yield results. That very afternoon, as Michael sat in a quiet coffee shop off Jefferson Boulevard, a woman slid into the chair across from him. She wore no disguise this time. Medium-length auburn hair framed a face that was striking, not for conventional beauty, but for its intensity. Something about her eyes triggered a deep sense of familiarity in Michael, though he still couldn't place her. "Hello, Michael," she said, her voice calm but alert, eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "I know you don't remember me, but we need to talk." Michael's heart raced, aware that Reynolds and her team would be watching this interaction from various points around the coffee shop. "You're the woman from the airport, the one who planted that device in my bag." "Yes, my name is Eliza Weaver. 5 years ago, I was part of your research team at Quantum Shield." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "And I'm not the only one watching you right now. The people who've been following you since Austin aren't just government agents. There's another team, private contractors with military training. They've been waiting for you to resurface." "Why should I believe anything you say?" Michael asked, though something in her expression triggered another memory fragment. The two of them working late in a lab, surrounded by diagrams and prototype equipment, her laughter at some joke he'd made. "Because I was there when you made the decision to erase your memories," she replied. "It wasn't an accident or something forced upon you. It was a calculated choice, the only way to protect what you'd created from falling into the wrong hands." "Eesh, and what exactly was that?" "The device in your backpack isn't a weapon, Michael. It's a key." She glanced around nervously. "We don't have much time. They're closing in. The memory suppression is temporary, designed to wear off gradually after 5 years. That's why fragments are returning. You built in a safeguard, a way to recover what you knew when the time was right. And you think that time is now?" "I know it is, because the countdown has already started." Her eyes locked with his, intense and urgent. "You didn't just create a communication disruptor, Michael. You created something much more powerful, something that could change everything. And now everyone wants it. Private military contractors, foreign intelligence services, even factions within our own government." Michael felt a chill run through him as another memory surfaced. Standing in a secure lab, looking at a completed prototype on a workbench, turning to Eliza and saying, "If this works the way we think it will, nothing will ever be the same." Eliza reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "You trusted me once. Trust me again. We need to go now. There's a place where you can safely recover your memories, but we have a narrow window to reach it." Michael hesitated, torn between the plan he'd agreed to with Wallace and Reynolds and the undeniable sense that this woman was telling the truth. a truth somehow connected to the fragments of memory struggling to reassemble themselves in his mind. "How do I know this isn't another trap?" he asked. "You don't," she admitted, "but consider this. If I wanted to harm you, why would I have alerted you to the device in such a public way? I could have approached you privately at any time in the past 3 months." As Michael weighed his options, he noticed a man in a dark suit entering the coffee shop, his hand subtly touching an earpiece. Another figure appeared at the side entrance, moving with the telltale precision of military training. "They're here," Eliza whispered urgently. "Both teams. We need to move now, or everything you sacrificed will have been for nothing." In that moment, Michael made his decision, one that would irrevocably set him on a path to uncovering the truth about his past and the dangerous knowledge he had chosen to forget. Michael glanced between Eliza and the approaching figures, making a split-second decision that would change everything. "Lead the way." Eliza immediately stood, guiding him toward the kitchen. A confused barista started to protest as they pushed through the swinging door, but Eliza flashed what looked like an official badge, buying them just enough time to reach the service exit. They emerged into an alley where a nondescript grey sedan waited with its engine running. "Get in," Eliza commanded, sliding into the driver's seat. As soon as Michael closed the passenger door, she accelerated, navigating the back streets of Dallas with the precision of someone who had carefully planned this escape route. "They'll be tracking us," Michael said, looking behind them. "I'm sure Reynolds has a team following." "Not for long," Eliza replied, making a sharp turn into an underground parking garage. She drove to the lowest level where another car, a black SUV, was parked. "Switch vehicles. It's a standard counter-surveillance tactic." As they transferred to the SUV, Michael noticed Eliza remove something from her pocket and place it under the sedan's chassis. "GPS jammer," she explained. "It'll broadcast our signal." "Moving in the opposite direction for about 30 minutes. Should buy us enough time." Once they were on the highway heading north, Michael studied Eliza's profile. Fragments of memory continued to surface. Working late nights in the lab, heated technical discussions, a growing sense of alarm as they made breakthrough after breakthrough. But the context, the specific details of what they were working on, remained frustratingly out of reach. "You said the device is a key, not a weapon," Michael ventured. "A key to what?" Eliza kept her eyes on the road. "To the quantum encryption vault, where you stored the complete blueprints and research data. You designed it so that only the combination of the physical key, that device, and your biometric signature could access it. Even you couldn't access it without both components. But why go to such extreme lengths? What was I working on that warranted this level of security?" "Quantum consciousness integration," Eliza said, the term sending a jolt of recognition through Michael. "You discovered a method to create a direct interface between human neural networks and quantum computing systems. Not just inputting commands or receiving data, but a true symbiosis, allowing human consciousness to operate within a quantum framework." The words unlocked another flood of fragmented memories. Complex equations, neural mapping diagrams, test results showing unprecedented patterns of quantum entanglement between biological neurons and artificial systems. "That's impossible," Michael murmured, even as he knew it wasn't. "The implications would be revolutionary," Eliza finished. "Consciousness untethered from physical limitations, the ability to process information at quantum speeds, potential immortality of human thought patterns, access to computational power beyond anything currently imaginable." She glanced at him briefly. "And also potentially catastrophic if weaponized or monopolized." Which is why I hid it," Michael realized. "I saw where it was heading, saw how it could be misused." "Exactly. The government funding was coming through military channels. Questions were being asked about offensive capabilities, weaponization, potential. You began to understand that what you'd created could fundamentally alter the balance of power, not just between nations, but between those who controlled the technology and those who didn't. The highway stretched before them as they continued north, crossing into Oklahoma. Michael's head throbbed with each new memory fragment that surfaced, but the pieces were beginning to align into a coherent picture. "You were my research partner," he said suddenly, the realization striking him with certainty. "We worked together directly on the neural interface components." Eliza nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "For 3 years. We were close to a breakthrough when you decided to shut everything down. And we were close in other ways too," Michael added, another memory surfacing. Eliza in his arms, both of them laughing as they danced in his apartment to old jazz records after a successful test run. "Yes," she confirmed, her voice softening. "We were. So why didn't you disappear with me? Why stay behind?" "Someone had to remain to monitor the situation, to know when it was time to bring you back." Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "It wasn't an easy choice for either of us." They drove through the Oklahoma countryside. Eliza explained how she had maintained her position at Quantum Shield, keeping tabs on who was looking for Michael and his research. She had detected increased activity in recent months, unusual data searches, personnel transfers to the quantum computing division, classified meetings that excluded long-standing team members. Someone figured out the memory suppression would be wearing off around now. "They've been preparing to find you when your memories started returning naturally. But you found me first," Michael said. "How?" "I've been tracking you since you resurfaced in Austin 3 months ago. I wasn't the only one. When I realized others were closing in, I had to accelerate the timeline, hence the rather dramatic airport incident." Michael frowned. "You could have just approached me directly." "I needed to be certain your memory suppression was wearing off as designed. The airport security incident was a test to see if exposure to high-stress situations would trigger accelerated memory recovery. It worked better than expected." They continued north, eventually turning onto progressively smaller roads until they reached what appeared to be an abandoned research station in a remote wooded area near the Oklahoma-Arkansas border. The facility was surrounded by a chain link, fence topped with rusted barbed wire, signs warning of private property and hazardous materials. "What is this place?" Michael asked, as Eliza used a key card to open the gate. "Cold War-era research outpost, decommissioned in the 1990s. You bought it through a series of shell companies 5 years ago. It's completely off-grid. Its own power generator, satellite, internet connection, and enough supplies to last months if necessary." She parked the SUV beside the main building. "And most importantly, it houses the neural receptor chamber you built for the final phase of memory recovery." The interior of the facility belied its decrepit exterior. Once through the reinforced door, Michael found himself in a state-of-the-art laboratory that looked as if it had been set up yesterday. Advanced computer systems hummed quietly, and in the center of the main room stood what looked like a modified MRI chamber connected to a quantum computing array. "You designed this place as a failsafe," Eliza explained, moving to activate the systems. "Somewhere you could safely recover your memories when the time was right, with the equipment necessary to access and verify the quantum vault data." As Michael explored the facility, more memories began to surface. Him setting up this equipment, installing security protocols, recording video messages to his future self, explaining what would need to be done when he returned. In one room, he found a wall covered with photographs and notes, a physical backup of connections his amnesiac self might need. There were pictures of him and Eliza at various research sites, copies of redacted project documents, and news clippings about quantum computing breakthroughs and military technology acquisitions. "I left myself breadcrumbs," he murmured, studying. The wall. You were very thorough, Eliza agreed, joining him. You knew memory recovery would be disorienting, possibly traumatic. You wanted to make the process as smooth as possible. Michael turned to her, taking in her familiar features with new recognition. And you stayed behind, putting yourself at risk for years, just to make sure I found my way back here when the time was right. We both believed the technology was too important and too dangerous to leave to chance, she replied simply. What you discovered could transform humanity for better or worse. We couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands, but we also couldn't destroy it entirely. Some knowledge can't be unlearned. Before Michael could respond, an alarm sounded from the main computer terminal. Eliza rushed over, her expression tightening as she checked the security feeds. We've got company, 2 black SUVs approaching from the South Access Road. Michael joined her at the monitors. Government? No, Eliza said grimly. Private military, contractors, likely working for Quantum Shield's new parent company Nexus Dynamics. They acquired Quantum Shield 2 years ago and have been quietly reassembling your old research team. How did they find us so quickly? Eliza's expression darkened. I don't know, we were careful unless... She quickly began typing commands into the terminal, running a diagnostic on their equipment. A warning flashed on the screen. Unauthorized quantum entanglement signature detected. The device, Michael realized. The one that was planted. In my backpack, it wasn't just a key, it was also a tracker. A quantum tracker, Eliza confirmed, her voice tight with urgency. Virtually impossible to detect or block with conventional means. They've been following the quantum signature since the airport. Michael's mind raced. Fragments of knowledge about quantum entanglement and non-local particle communications surfacing. In his consciousness, we need to initialize the memory recovery procedure now. If I can access the complete data, I might remember how to counter the tracking signal. The process takes hours, Michael. We don't have that kind of time. We don't need the full recovery, just enough to access the critical security protocols. He moved to the neural chamber, already recalling the initialization sequence as muscle memory guided his fingers across the control panel. The quantum vault has defensive countermeasures built in. I just need to remember how to activate them. Eliza hesitated, then nodded decisively. I'll buy you as much time as I can. The facility has defensive systems, nothing lethal, but enough to slow them down. As Eliza activated the security protocols, Michael prepared the neural receptor chamber. The process was coming back to him in waves: how to calibrate the quantum field generators, how to synchronize the neural mapping sensors with his own brainwave patterns. This will accelerate the memory recovery, he explained as he reclined into the chamber. It's not without risk. The procedure was designed to be gradual for a reason. Rapid reintegration of suppressed memories could cause neural pathway disruption. In plain English? Eliza asked, helping attach the neural sensors to his temples. Best case scenario, I get a really bad headache. Worst case, systemic neural failure. Seeing her expression, he added, it's a risk we have to take. If they get their hands on this technology, on me, before I remember the security protocols, everything we sacrificed will have been for nothing. Eliza's hand lingered on his for a moment, a gesture filled with unspoken emotions. I'll be monitoring your vital signs. At the first sign of danger, I'm pulling you out. Michael nodded as the chamber began to hum with energy. If something goes wrong, there's a fail-safe protocol. The command is Phoenix Sunset. It will initiate a complete data purge and system shutdown. Use it if you have no other choice. As the chamber closed around him, Michael caught a final glimpse of Eliza's worried face before his consciousness began to fragment and reform in ways his mind had never experienced before. The quantum neural interface activated, creating a bridge between his brain's neural pathways and the artificial quantum network. The effect was immediate. and overwhelming. Memories didn't just return, they crashed into his consciousness like tidal waves, each one carrying emotional and sensory information that had been locked away for 5 years. The day he first conceptualized the quantum consciousness interface. The thrill of the first successful test. The growing relationship with Eliza as they worked side by side, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And then came the darker memories. The realization of what they had created, the potential for both miraculous advancement and catastrophic misuse. Secret meetings with military officials who spoke of tactical applications and cognitive warfare. The growing pressure to weaponize what had begun as a quest for scientific understanding. In the eye of this mental storm, Michael found himself standing in a strange mental landscape, a visual representation his brain had created to process the quantum data flowing through his consciousness. Here, memories appeared as glowing nodes in a vast, interconnected web that stretched in all directions. He could navigate this space with thoughts alone, pulling closer the nodes that contained the information he needed. At the center of this mental web, a pulsing red node caught his attention, the core security protocols of the quantum vault. As he reached for it, his consciousness expanded exponentially, connecting to the quantum computing array in ways that transcended conventional understanding of human-machine interaction. In this expanded state, Michael could perceive patterns invisible to normal human cognition, including the quantum entanglement signature that was allowing the Nexus Dynamics team to track them. The solution appeared in his mind with perfect clarity, a counter-resonance frequency that would disrupt the entanglement without destroying the key functionality of the device. Outside the chamber, Eliza watched anxiously as Michael's neural patterns fluctuated wildly on the monitoring screens. Warning indicators flashed as his brain activity spiked beyond safe parameters, but she hesitated to terminate the process. They were running out of time. The security feeds showed the Nexus team had breached the outer perimeter and were approaching the main building. Inside the quantum mindscape, Michael gathered the critical information he needed: security protocols, countermeasures, the true nature and purpose of the technology he had created. As he prepared to disengage from the quantum interface, new presence manifested in his mental landscape, another consciousness attempting to access the same quantum network. Someone else was trying to hack into his mind through the quantum connection. The intrusion into the quantum mindscape was like nothing Michael had ever experienced, a foreign consciousness attempting to navigate the same mental landscape, leaving ripples of disruption in its wake. In this abstract realm of pure information, the other presence appeared as a shadow, moving between the memory nodes, searching for something specific. With newfound control over the quantum interface, Michael erected defensive barriers around his most crucial memories, obscuring them from the intruder. Then, using techniques that were returning to him with each passing second, he traced the quantum intrusion back to its source. The neural connection led to someone in close proximity to the facility, someone with advanced quantum interface technology. As Michael focused on the intruder's signature, recognition bloomed in his consciousness. He knew this pattern, this unique neural fingerprint. Dr. Victor Harmon, his former mentor at Quantum Shield. Outside in the physical world, Eliza's voice penetrated Michael's awareness, urgent and distant. "Michael, we've got a problem. It's Harmon. He's leading the Nexus team. They've breached the main entrance. I'm initiating emergency protocols." Michael struggled to disengage from the quantum interface, but the connection with Harmon's consciousness created a dangerous entanglement. Breaking it too abruptly could damage both their neural pathways. Instead, he opened a direct communication channel within the quantum mindscape. "Victor," Michael projected his thoughts through the quantum link. "What are you doing?" The shadow presence coalesced into a more defined form, a representation of Harmon as Michael remembered him. Tall, distinguished, with eyes that reflected keen intelligence. Fascinating. Harmon's mental voice echoed. You've actually achieved stable bidirectional quantum consciousness transfer. The theories were correct. You're trying to steal my research, Michael accused. Why? You were against militarizing this technology from the beginning. Circumstances change, Michael. Priorities evolve. Harmon's mental projection moved closer. Do you have any idea what's happened in the 5 years you've been hiding? Quantum computing has advanced beyond anything we imagined. Nations are on the verge of breaking every encryption system we've ever created. The balance of power is already shifting. So you decided to weaponize consciousness itself? That's your solution? I decided to ensure the technology is developed responsibly, under proper oversight, Harmon countered. Your disappearing act didn't stop progress. It only removed the one person who understood the ethical implications of this research. By running away, you surrendered any say in how it would be used. The accusation struck Michael like a physical blow. Had his decision to hide the research actually accelerated the very outcome he'd feared? You need to disengage from the neural interface, Harmon continued. The accelerated memory recovery is causing dangerous neural oscillation patterns. Your brain isn't meant to process this much information this quickly. As if to confirm Harmon's warning, pain lanced through Michael's consciousness. The quantum mindscape flickered, nodes of memory blurring and splitting. In the physical world, he could dimly hear alarms from the monitoring equipment, Eliza's voice growing more frantic. Let me help you, Michael, Harmon's presence urged. I have a portable stabilization unit that can safely disconnect you from the quantum field. Without it, you risk permanent neural damage. Despite his suspicion, Michael recognized the truth in Harmon's assessment. The quantum interface was becoming unstable, the connection between his consciousness and the system degrading with each passing second. If the connection failed catastrophically while his mind was fully integrated, the results would be devastating. Why should I trust you? Michael challenged. You brought an armed team to capture me. A precaution, Harmon replied. We didn't know what state you'd be in, or if Dr. Weaver had been honest about her intentions. She's been operating her own agenda for years. A new ripple of doubt spread through Michael's quantum consciousness. What did Harmon mean about Eliza's agenda? Before he could pursue this line of questioning, a violent disruption tore through the quantum mindscape. In the physical world, someone had initiated an emergency shutdown of the neural chamber. Michael's consciousness snapped back to his physical body with brutal suddenness. The chamber door was open, and Eliza was frantically disconnecting the neural sensors from his temples. His entire body convulsed with the neurological shock of forced disconnection. They've breached the main lab, Eliza explained hurriedly as she helped him sit up. We need to move now. There's an emergency exit through the rear storage area. Michael's head throbbed with excruciating pain, but his newly recovered memories remained intact, including critical knowledge about the quantum key. Wait, he gasped, clutching the edge of the chamber for support. The device. We need it. It's here, Eliza assured him, producing the small object from her pocket. I retrieved it from security at the airport. A contact on the inside. Yeah. As Michael struggled to his feet, the main door to the neural chamber room burst open. 4 armed security personnel in tactical gear entered, followed by Dr. Victor Harmon. Despite being in his 60s, Harmon carried himself with the vitality of a much younger man. His silver hair was cropped short, and his piercing blue eyes immediately focused on Michael. Stand down, Dr. Weaver, Harmon commanded. No one needs to get hurt here. The security team spread out, weapons raised but not aimed directly at them, a show of force rather than immediate threat. Michael stepped protectively in front of Eliza, his mind racing to process the situation. With his newly recovered strategic abilities, Victor, Michael acknowledged, his voice steadier than he felt. You've gone to a lot of trouble to find me. 5 years of searching, Harmon confirmed, though I suspect Dr. Weaver has known your whereabouts for much longer than she's admitted to anyone. Michael glanced at Eliza, whose expression remained resolutely neutral. What does he mean? Before she could answer, Harmon continued, Did she tell you why she placed that device in your backpack so publicly? Why she ensured it would trigger every security alarm in the airport? She wanted us to find you, Michael. She needed us to flush you out of hiding because she couldn't access the quantum vault without you. That's not true, Eliza protested. I was protecting you from them. By making him a target for every intelligence agency monitoring unusual security incidents, Harmon countered. By ensuring his face would be in every database? Curious protection methods, Doctor? Weaver. Michael's newly recovered memories allowed him to process the conflicting narratives with greater clarity than would have been possible hours ago. You're both telling partial truths, he said slowly. Eliza did want me found, but not just by nexus. She needed the government involved as well, needed multiple parties aware of my re-emergence so no single group could simply make me disappear again. Harmon's expression flickered with surprise, then grudging respect. Your memory recovery appears to be more complete than I anticipated. Complete enough to know that you're not here because you're concerned about the ethical applications of my research, Michael replied. Nexus Dynamics has contracts with 3 different intelligence agencies for developing cognitive enhancement technology. You're not trying to prevent weaponization, you're trying to control it. And she isn't? Harmon gestured toward Eliza. Ask her about Project Lighthouse. Ask her who she's really been working with for the past 3 years. Michael turned to Eliza, whose composure had finally cracked, a flicker of guilt crossing her features. Eliza. She met his gaze steadily. I did what was necessary to protect your work from becoming just another military asset. Yes, I made alliances with private research foundations, with academic institutions that believe this technology should benefit humanity broadly, not just serve national security interests. Indeed, she's been selling pieces of your theoretical framework to the highest ethical bidders, Harmon explained. Nothing operational, nothing that could be weaponized, but enough to ensure that no single entity could ever monopolize the complete technology. The revelation should have felt like betrayal, but as Michael processed it against his recovered memories, he realized it aligned perfectly with the contingency plans he and Eliza had discussed years ago, before he chose to erase his memories and disappear. It wasn't her agenda, Michael said, understanding dawning. It was our agenda, a distributed knowledge approach, ensuring that if the quantum consciousness interface was ever rebuilt, it would be through collaborative effort across multiple ethical institutions, not under the control of any single government or corporation. He turned to Eliza, newfound certainty in his voice. That's why you didn't come with me. You stayed to implement the fallback plan, to distribute sanitized components of the research to ethical partners around the world. A smile of relief crossed Eliza's face. You remember. Not everything, Michael admitted, but enough. Harmon sighed, lowering his hands in a gesture of resignation. Then you also remember that there are greater threats than Nexus or the US government, Michael. Other nations are pursuing similar technology without any ethical constraints. The first functional quantum consciousness interface will reshape global power structures overnight. Which is precisely why no one should control it exclusively, Michael countered. Not Nexus, not the military, not even Eliza's coalition of research institutions. A tense silence filled the room as the implications of the standoff became clear. The armed security team looked to Harmon for direction, their weapons still at the ready but not aimed. What's your play here, Michael? Harmon finally asked. You can't run forever, and even with your memories restored, you can't build this technology alone again. I don't intend to run, and I don't intend to rebuild it, at least not as a proprietary system. Michael straightened, his mind now fully engaged with the strategic implications of his recovered knowledge. What I propose is a summit. Representatives from Nexus, from the government, from Eliza's research coalition, and from my own team. We establish an international oversight framework for quantum consciousness technology development. Idealistic nonsense, Harmon scoffed. The moment you go public with this proposal, every intelligence agency on the planet will target you. Not if the knowledge is already too widely distributed to suppress, Michael countered. Not if the only path forward is collaborative. He turned to the quantum key device still in Eliza's hand. This isn't just a key to my research vault, it's also a distribution node. When activated with my biometric signature, it doesn't just unlock the data. It disperses it simultaneously to 200 secure servers around the world, each containing a fragment of the complete framework. No single entity gets the full picture. Harmon's expression shifted to one of grudging admiration. You planned for this eventuality all along. I planned for human nature, Michael corrected, for the inevitability that someone would try to weaponize or monopolize this technology. He looked between Harmon and Eliza, seeing each of them with new clarity. Neither was a villain in this story, just as neither was entirely a hero. They were all simply people trying to navigate the implications of a technology that had advanced beyond humanity's ethical frameworks. So what happens now? Harmon asked, the tension in the room subtly shifting. Now, we negotiate, Michael replied, not as adversaries, but as stewards of something that could either elevate humanity or destroy it. The quantum consciousness interface isn't just another weapon or tool, it's potentially an evolutionary step for human cognition. Harmon signaled his security team to lower their weapons completely. You always were the idealist, Michael. It's what made you brilliant and frustrating. Someone has to be, Michael replied with a slight smile. Otherwise, we're just technicians, building better ways to control and destroy each other. As the armed standoff de-escalated into a tense truce, Michael felt the weight of the decision before him. The quantum key in Eliza's hand represented more than just his research. It represented a crossroads for human development. How this technology entered the world would shape its impact for generations to come. But even as this momentary peace settled over the room, Michael's newly recovered strategic mind recognized that other players were still moving on this chessboard, players who might not be so easily convinced by appeals to humanity's better nature. The woman from the airport surveillance footage, who wasn't Eliza, the intelligence agencies who had been monitoring the situation from afar, the private military contractors who saw dollar signs in cognitive enhancement technology. The game was far from over, and the true test of Michael's vision for this technology was just beginning. As if summoned by his thoughts, the facility's perimeter alarms suddenly blared to life. A new presence had been detected approaching from the north, multiple vehicles moving at high speed toward the compound. Expecting more company? Michael asked, looking between Harmon and Eliza. Their equally surprised expressions told him everything he needed to know. Whoever was coming, they weren't part of either's plans. The quantum chessboard had just become even more complex. The security monitors showed 3 black SUVs approaching from the North Access Road, moving with the precise coordination that suggested professional tactical training. Unlike Harmon's team, these vehicles bore no identifying markings. Foreign intelligence? Michael asked, moving quickly to the control terminal. Harmon joined him, studying the footage with a frown. Doubtful. CIA or NSA would have coordinated with us. This is someone else. Private contractors, Eliza suggested, her expression grim. Probably working for Zenith Technologies. They've been trying to poach quantum consciousness research for years. Michael's recovered memories supplied the context. Zenith Technologies, a multinational tech conglomerate. with ties to several foreign governments, had been aggressively pursuing advanced AI and neural interface technology. They weren't bound by the same ethical or regulatory constraints as American companies. "How long until they reach the facility?" Michael asked. 7 minutes, maybe less," Harmon replied, already activating his comm unit. "Jenkins, deploy countermeasures on the north perimeter. Non-lethal deterrence only." While Harmon coordinated his security team, Michael turned to Eliza. "We need to activate the quantum key now. If Zenith gets their hands on this technology without the ethical distribution framework in place, we'd be looking at unregulated military applications within months," she finished, understanding the stakes. Michael took the quantum key from Eliza, feeling its subtle vibration intensify as it responded to his biometric signature. The device recognized him at a quantum level, a security measure that went beyond fingerprints or DNA to identify the unique quantum signature of his neural patterns. "The activation sequence requires a direct interface with the main quantum processor," he explained, moving toward a secured terminal in the corner of the lab. "Once initiated, the distribution protocol is automatic and irreversible." As Michael prepared the system, Harmon approached, his expression troubled. "You understand what you're doing, right? Once that information is distributed, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. For better or worse, quantum consciousness technology becomes part of humanity's future." "It already is part of our future," Michael countered. "The question isn't whether it will be developed, it's who develops it first and for what purpose." He met Harmon's gaze steadily. "Would you rather it be Zenith or some military black ops program with no oversight?" Before Harmon could respond, the building shook with a distant explosion. The perimeter defenses had engaged, but the Zenith team was pressing forward undeterred. "We're out of time," Eliza urged. "Activate it, Michael." Michael inserted the quantum key into the specialized port on the terminal. The system hummed to life, recognizing the device and awaiting final authorization. This was the moment of no return, the culmination of years of research, sacrifice, and planning. "Wait," Harmon said suddenly. "Before you do this, there's something you should know." He hesitated, internal conflict evident in his expression. "The government didn't just want your technology for national security. There was another application they were pursuing, one that goes beyond weapons or intelligence gathering." Michael's hand paused over the activation sequence. "What application?" "Consciousness preservation," Harmon replied, his voice lower. "The ability to transfer human consciousness to a quantum substrate, potentially indefinitely." The revelation struck Michael like a physical blow. This had been one of the theoretical applications he'd considered in the early days of research, before the national security implications had overtaken everything else. The idea that consciousness could exist independent of biological constraints, that death itself might become optional rather than inevitable. That's why they've been so relentless in pursuing this, Michael realized. It's not just about weapons or power, it's about transcendence. For the select few who would control the technology, Eliza pointed out, imagine a world where only the wealthy and powerful have access to indefinite lifespans, the ultimate form of inequality. Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. The security feeds showed the Zenith team had breached the outer defenses and were approaching the main building. "We don't have time for philosophical debates," Harmon urged. "Whatever you're going to do it now." Michael took a deep breath, his mind racing through the implications. His original plan had focused on preventing military applications, but he hadn't fully considered this angle, the potential for quantum consciousness technology to create an entirely new form of human existence with profound social and ethical ramifications. The distribution plan needs modification, he decided, fingers flying over the terminal interface. We need to ensure the consciousness preservation aspects are handled with even more care. than the military applications. "What are you doing?" Eliza asked, watching as Michael altered the distribution protocols. "Adding conditions to the release," he explained. "The quantum consciousness framework will still be distributed to prevent monopolization, but the consciousness preservation components will be locked behind additional ethical safeguards, international oversight committees, transparent development, protocols, and guaranteed equal access provisions." Harmon looked skeptical. "You think legal safeguards will stop people from pursuing immortality by any means necessary?" "No," Michael admitted, "but I can ensure that the only viable path to developing the technology includes these safeguards from the beginning. The quantum encryption I'm embedding will make it mathematically impossible to implement consciousness preservation without also implementing the ethical framework." A third explosion, much closer, cut their conversation short. The security feeds showed the Zenith team at the main entrance, deploying breaching equipment. "Now or never, Michael," Eliza urged. With a final keystroke, Michael activated the quantum key. The device pulsed with energy as it interfaced with the quantum processor, initiating the secure distribution protocol. On the screen, a progress bar indicated the transmission of data packets to secure servers worldwide, each containing fragments of the complete technology, carefully partitioned to prevent misuse while enabling collaborative development under ethical guidelines. "It's done," Michael said, watching as the system confirmed successful transmission to all designated recipients. "The quantum consciousness framework now belongs to humanity as a whole, not to any government, corporation, or individual." The moment of completion was punctuated by the sound of the main entrance doors being breached. Harmon's security team took defensive positions, prepared for confrontation with the Zenith forces. "We need to get you out of here," Harmon said to Michael. "You're still the only person who fully understands this technology. Your knowledge remains valuable, even with the distribution complete." Michael shook his head. "Running isn't the answer anymore. It's time to face this directly." He turned to Eliza. "Activate the emergency broadcast protocol." She understood immediately, moving to another terminal and initiating a sequence that would broadcast their situation live to all the research institutions and oversight entities that had just received fragments of the quantum technology. Whatever happened next would have hundreds of witnesses across the global scientific community. "Smart move," Harmon acknowledged. "Zenith can't simply make us disappear if the whole world is watching." The security feeds showed the Zenith team pausing their advance, clearly receiving new instructions as they became aware of the broadcast. Their tactical advantage had suddenly evaporated in the face of international scrutiny. Michael stepped forward, addressing the camera that was now streaming to research facilities worldwide. "My name is Michael Carter. 5 years ago, I discovered a technology that could fundamentally alter human existence, quantum consciousness integration. I chose to hide that discovery because I feared its misuse. Today, I've released it to humanity with safeguards that ensure it can only be developed cooperatively and ethically." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "To those who sought to control this technology exclusively, your efforts are now futile. The knowledge is distributed in a way that requires global cooperation. No single entity can develop it alone. The age of technological monopolies ends today." As if in response to his declaration, the facility's communication system indicated an incoming transmission, not from Zenith, but from Agent Reynolds and Director Wallace at the Department of Homeland Security. "Carter, this is Director Wallace. We're monitoring your broadcast and have federal agents en route to secure the facility. The Zenith operatives will be detained. I strongly advise all parties to stand down and prepare for a peaceful transfer to federal custody." The Zenith team realizing their position was now untenable, began a tactical withdrawal. On the monitors, their vehicles could be seen retreating down the access road, pursued by newly arrived government helicopters. Harmon lowered his weapon, signaling his security team to do the same. "Looks like the cavalry has arrived." "Not exactly. How I planned this operation to end." "It's not ending," Michael corrected him. "It's just beginning. The real work starts now, bringing together all the stakeholders to develop this technology responsibly." As the immediate danger passed, Michael, Eliza, and Harmon found themselves in the strange position of transitioning from adversaries to potential collaborators. The distributed nature of the quantum consciousness framework meant that no single group, not Nexus, not the government, not Zenith, could proceed without cooperation from the others. "What happens now?" Eliza asked as they awaited the arrival of the federal agents. "Now we build something new," Michael replied, "a collaborative framework that ensures this technology serves humanity rather than controlling it. It won't be easy. There will be conflicts of interest, attempts to circumvent the safeguards, power struggles between nations and corporations. But the alternative was worse." "You're putting a lot of faith in human nature," Harmon observed, not without a hint of admiration. "People aren't always so noble when faced with the prospect of power or immortality." "I'm not naive about human nature," Michael said. "That's exactly why I designed the distribution this way. It acknowledges our flaws and builds in countermeasures against our worst impulses. No one gets everything they want, but everyone gets a voice in how we move forward." 3 months later, Michael stood at a podium in Geneva, addressing the newly formed International Quantum Consciousness Oversight Committee. Representatives from major research institutions, governments, and corporate entities filled the auditorium, including Eliza and Harmon, who sat at opposite ends of the front row. "The technology we are developing has the potential to reshape what it means to be human," Michael began. "It could end disease, expand human cognition, and eventually offer a form of continuity beyond our biological constraints. But these possibilities come with profound responsibilities." He looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing both hope and apprehension on their faces. "The distributed framework ensures that no single entity can monopolize or weaponize quantum consciousness integration. But it also creates a mandate for cooperation unlike anything we've attempted before. Every breakthrough, every application, every ethical guideline must be developed collaboratively and transparently." After the formal session concluded, Michael found himself on the balcony overlooking Lake Geneva, joined by Eliza. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, noting his pensive expression. "Not second thoughts," he clarified, "just awareness of the magnitude of what we've set in motion. For better or worse, humanity is about to evolve in ways we can barely imagine." "You could have kept running," she reminded him, "kept the technology hidden." Michael shook his head. "That was never going to work long term. Someone would have rediscovered the principles eventually, perhaps without the ethical considerations we've built in. At least this way, we have a chance to shape how it develops." Eliza's hand found his, there, fingers intertwining naturally. "So where does that leave us? Your memories have returned. You remember everything now. Our work together, our relationship, why we made the choices we did." "Not everything," Michael admitted. "There are still gaps, emotional contexts that feel just out of reach, but enough to know that what we had was real and that I trusted you with everything, including my disappearance." Before she could respond, they were interrupted by Harmon, who approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "I thought you might need these. The Chinese delegation is pushing back on the equal access provisions, and the EU representatives are demanding additional privacy guarantees. It's going to be a long negotiation." Michael accepted the glass with a nod of thanks. "Did you expect anything less? We're rewriting the rules of human existence." Speaking of which, Harmon said, his tone becoming more serious, the Consciousness Preservation Work Group has made their preliminary report. The theoretical framework is sound. Within a decade, we could have functional prototypes for human consciousness transfer to quantum substrates. The implications hung in the air between them, the first concrete step toward a form of human immortality, toward consciousness freed from biological constraints. That's why the ethical framework matters more than ever, Michael said. The decisions we make now will shape not just the next generation, but potentially all future generations of humanity, whether biological, digital, or something in between. As night fell over Geneva, the three of them stood together on that balcony, former adversaries united by the recognition that they were standing at a pivotal moment in human history. The quantum consciousness technology would transform humanity, but the direction of that transformation would depend on the foundations they were laying now. For Michael Carter, the journey had come full circle. 5 years ago, he had chosen to erase his memories and disappear to protect the world from knowledge he feared wasn't ready for. Now, he stood at the center of a global effort to integrate that same knowledge responsibly into human civilization. The risks remained enormous. The potential for misuse still existed, but now, instead of one man carrying the burden alone, humanity would face the challenges together, with all our flaws, but also with all our capacity for wisdom, compassion, and growth. As he looked out over the twinkling lights of Geneva, reflecting on the still waters of the lake, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not naive optimism, but a measured hope grounded in the belief that with the right safeguards and shared purpose, humanity could navigate even the most profound technological revolutions without losing its soul in the process. The quantum legacy would belong to all of us, and together we would determine what it would mean for our future. Dear listeners, we hope that Michael Carter's journey of rediscovery and ethical awakening has captivated your imagination. The questions his story raises about technology, memory, and our shared human future resonate deeply in our increasingly digital world. To continue exploring these fascinating themes, we've prepared a special playlist featuring equally compelling narratives about humanity at technological crossroads. You'll find it by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. Every day, we bring you unique stories that probe the complexity and wonder of human existence. What ethical dilemmas would you face with quantum consciousness technology? We're eager to read your thoughts in the comment section below. Until our next adventure together, remember that the future is written not just with code, but with conscience.